Did you hear our president at the high noon speech, 48 hours get out of town, he said to Saddam and journalists. Isn't that interesting? He also, if you listen to his speech, the high noon speech, and he always gets that furrowed look on his face like, they told me not to look like I was a deer caught in the headlights. He said, I want to speak to the Iraqi people. And he did, remember? And Dick Cheney forgot to tell him to speak Arabic. And I thought he was going to say something like, listen, our kids are coming in to liberate you, so, don't shoot at them. No, he said, do not destroy oil wells. I don't make this up. And then let's see what else he said. I could just read you his speech. You gotta laugh. Otherwise, like Dalai Lama said, it wouldn't help to cry. And he says he's going after those who have aided, trained, and harbored terrorists, including operatives of Al-Qaeda. Yeah, I thought, shit, he's gonna bust his daddy. Imagine Easter dinner down at the ranch. Spread 'em, Dad. Read Barbara Wright's. Harboring. We'll talk about that. Harboring those guys. Actually, and then and he also said that there is. Oh, here. Yeah. War has no certainty except the certainty of sacrifice. And he would know because he was a war hero during the war in Vietnam. I heard laughter, and that's not nice. He was in fact a fighter pilot, the top gun in the something called the Texas Air Guard, which is which is why he forgot to say don't shoot our kids because the Air Guard's kind of an army for weekend warriors afraid of the sight of blood, especially their own. And I was interested in that because we were fighting right now, as a three-front war. We got the war against Saddam, and we got the war against Osama, and we got the war against affirmative action, right? And yeah, I guess he saw all those. He's worried. He saw all those black kids in college, and he was concerned. He said, our president, he said, no one should get their position except through merit. Yeah, he did. No, come on. I do know, investigative reporter that I am, I did check. He actually did, this is no kidding, he did take a test to get the fighter pilot job in the Texas Air Guard. Out of a possible score of 100, he scored 25. He still got the job, which you may think, well, maybe there's some affirmative action used by his daddy. Was the head of the Republican Party, had been a powerful congressman, very quick, by the way, to send other men's sons to Vietnam, right? And now, like father, like son. So a question arises whether powerful Congressman Bush put in a call for his son. And if that had been discovered, it might have changed history a bit because it was a very close election. He was running against, for governor of Texas, against Ann Richards. But the Democrats couldn't bring it up because there's no proof of anything, even though it was odd because there were thousands of kids who took that test. Most scored higher, but many of those were, people of color, and they had an affirmative action program at that time called Vietnam, and for them, he got the job. I don't want to say that our president's a chicken hawk coward, happy to have other people die for his beliefs. But if you read the book, I want to move on. You'll see that it has to do with a $23 million payment by a corporation called GTEC. I'll just, rather than go through that story, I have to tell you this. Because, you know, the war is coming to a conclusion, and so we ought to know who the winner is, right? Who's winning this war? Well, who remembers who won Gulf War Part 1? Who won? Who won? I just heard Halliburton. Who won Gulf War Part 1 in 91? Do you remember? It was democracy, right? Democracy. Democracy, we were going to get, all we had to do was remove Saddam Hussein's boot from the necks of the Kuwaitis, and we were going to have democracy in Kuwait. Women were driving cars, you remember all those things? Women driving cars, they're going to have a more of a democratic system. It's 12 years. I don't know. Have you seen the election returns from Kuwait yet? I'm still waiting. Or democracy we brought to Afghanistan, one warlord, one vote. Yeah. And now here it comes. Bush, today's Wall Street Journal. Democracy wins again. Bush officials scramble to push democracy in Iraq. Okay, first paragraph. During lunch last week at The Palm, which is like the most expensive restaurant in Washington, tax cut enthusiast and lobbyist Grover Norquist stopped by the table of the Recording Industry Association of America's Hillary Rosen. "I need your help," he said cheerfully. "I'm working on intellectual property laws for a free Iraq." Let me continue. At the Treasury Department, one undersecretary, John Taylor, is drafting tax laws for post-war Iraq, while the other, Peter Fisher, is working on new security laws for Iraq. Meanwhile, U.S. Trade Representative Robert Zellick, who came to us from Enron Corporation, sees a free Iraq as a key to a potential Middle Eastern free trade zone. Democracy's coming to Iraq. Not elections. I looked, the word elections doesn't, I read the whole column. I got that. I haven't read the last paragraph, wait. Nope, nothing about elections. Regime change, yeah. So who's winning the war? Who's going to win this war? Any nominees? Bechtel. Carlisle. Well, actually, first of all, I didn't tell you who won Gulf War I. After Daddy Bush left the White House, and he took with him some Oval Office stationery, and he wrote a letter to the Kuwaiti democracy. I want to call it, the royals, royals means American allies who are dictators in robes and crowns, right? So he wrote a letter to the dictators of Kuwait and said, didn't bring up the democracy thing, but did say, please, in the letter, please give an oil concession to Chevron Oil Corporation. Now, our president said he wasn't going to lobby for any corporations when he left the White House. So what's going on? He didn't, and in his defense, he did not take a dime from Chevron. Now, Chevron did put over $600,000 into his son's political campaign. Now, but I don't want you making any connection between, the money and the letter. No connection. So at least we do know who won Gulf War I, which is Chevron and the Republican Campaign Committee. But who's going to win Gulf War II? It's almost over. We should know the winner by now. Exxon, okay. We hear Zellick's, Enron's going. Carlisle, okay. Carlisle's a good one. Our president just asked for $75 billion. Congress will not be rolled over. They gave him $80 billion. And $450 million for Carlisle in the current budget. Carlisle for a weapon called the Crusader. Yeah, I see that you already picked up that there's a little marketing problem as we're invading another Muslim country. But there has another problem, is that the Crusader is a self-propelled howitzer. It's like a tank. And it unfortunately can't really propel itself. It needs a bulldozer in front of it, because it's so clunky, to clear the way. So even Tommy Franks, the new military dictator of Iraq, you notice a problem there. See, Franks is a military dictator who has weapons of mass destruction, so we're going to send in special forces in a couple weeks to take him right out. Just, consistency thing. Yeah, so Carlisle got, so Franks said no to that weapon because he couldn't find any guys to get in the bulldozer. So they're going to give, Carlisle still is in there for all the money that they wanted for the weapon will remain there so the project can wind down. I know you're looking at me. When I wind down, I get a glass of wine and veg out in front of the tube. They get nearly half $500 million, which has nothing to do with the fact that Poppy Bush is their arms dealing representative to Saudi Arabia and Asia. Or that W himself, our president, was on the payroll of Carlyle Corporation. They put him in charge of a subsidiary, Cater Air, Merit, because of his business acumen, despite which that subsidiary did go bankrupt. No connections there. Any other nominees? Richard Pearl. Yeah. I'll go for that one. Let me throw in my own. Lockheed Corporation. Lockheed, which which is in for the Virginia class submarine, which is designed to hunt Soviet subs. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, I know. There are no Soviet subs. Which just shows you what an effective weapon it's been. And just like our president, when he people make fun of him, but he was a fighter pilot in Texas Air Guard, and the Viet Cong never dreamed of attacking San Antonio. It's true. And anyway, so I contacted Lockheed and I said, whoa, well, why is it still in the budget? And they said, well, we've reconfigured it for the new type of war. I said, okay, well, here's a map of Afghanistan, landlocked. And here's, and they said, yeah, but look at Iraq. There's a little beach on the end. Have you ever noticed that little, looks like the end of a balloon? See, they said that the sub is being reconfigured to land commandos, to go after, the nests of terrorists. They're going to land commandos on the beach. I said, whoa. I said the Israelis with a more limited budget use canoes, right? But I said, I was more interested in the fact that this boat is like twice as big as Town Hall, 3 times as big as Town Hall. I said, how do you sneak it up to the beach? It's my job as a reporter, ace reporter that I am. And Lockheed said, don't be ridiculous, Mr. Palast. We don't sneak that submarine up to the beach. We've reconfigured the torpedoes. We've hollowed them out, and we put 9 Marines inside, and I don't make this up. I report this on BBC. I'm sure you'll see it on the nightly. Our president, $1.5 billion a boat. Our president thought this was so neat. He's ordered 3 dozen. Other nominees, I heard Richard Pearl, yeah, who did, by the way, Pearl conceived, he's the guy who conceived of the war against Iraq as a response to September 11th attack in 2001. He published his plan for the attack in 1997. Okay, no connections. Yeah, so we had this deal going with Adnan Khashoggi, the killer arms dealer from Saudi Arabia who funded the Axis of Evil. And this guy, Pearl's teamed up with. The guy who gave the guns to the Ayatollah in the Iran-Contra arms for hostage deal, right? It was so creepy that Pearl had to resign as chairman of the Defense Advisory Committee. And, but that left another question open to me, because I was looking at a company that was giving money to the Bush campaign called Barrick Gold Mining, these Canadians. And I was thinking about that, and it had on the board of that company a guy named George Herbert Walker Bush. Who are these guys? So, I'm looking around. I can't find a guy named Joe Barrick in the Canadian phone books. Instead, it was a company founded by that well-known Canadian, Adnan Khashoggi. So now, which raises a question, does Poppy Bush have to resign as first father? Right? So, and let's talk about, I want to talk about that. Follow the money. Follow the money. Where exactly does the Bush family bank account end and our foreign policy begin? Let's look at Barrick Gold Mine. How did Poppy end up with that company? What do you do with the used president, right? And I looked, and sure enough, just before he left office, the Bush administration, senior administration, changed the rules for laying claims to gold mines. And, under the old gold mining prospectors Gold Rush Act, where we'd have prospectors, find the nugget in their pan, and they lift up and they go, "Eureka, I found it," run off to the claims office, put down $5, and they get an acre of land to mine, look for gold. Under the new rules, Barrick Gold Mining was able to, pick up Daddy Bush and take him to the claims office, say, "Eureka, we found him," lay down $10,000 and get a claim to the largest gold mine in the hemisphere, $10 billion worth of gold ore. Nice. And then Daddy got the job. Now, I reported that in the Observer, the Sunday paper of The Guardian that I work with. I had George Orwell's old job as a columnist there. And I knew he'd like this one, so I reported it. "Hey, George, look at this." And Bush's gold fingers sued my paper. Okay? Now, it's kind of frightening because there is no First Amendment in Britain. There's no freedom of press. There's no written constitution. My paper is even now facing criminal charges for reporting that the National Security Agency of the U.S. was trying to bug UN delegations. Right? We reported that. My editor's facing jail time. Okay? Now, yeah. And whereas in America, they had a tough time reporting that because they were facing overtime, right? So it's sued. This is serious stuff. So, and they, under British law, all they had to do was claim that there was a defamatory implication. They said if anyone hears, they didn't deny about Khashoggi, they didn't deny the 10,000, they didn't deny the 10 billion gold ore, they didn't deny that Daddy Bush got the job. What they said was anyone hearing this set of facts, any reasonable person reading this set of facts would conclude that they're connected. That was a tough one. So I signed a statement and let my paper sign a statement that, in fact, is that for me? There's no connections. So don't get me in trouble. W got the donations, Barrick got the gold mine, the public got the shaft, Poppy got the job, and there's no connections. Yeah. Still didn't answer. What do you do with the youth president? Right? So I looked further. On their website said that Bush's International Advisory Board was able to help the company get a mining concession in Tanzania. I thought, well, you just buy it or bid or something. No. It was politically difficult because the gold mining concession that they're trying to buy from another company was useless and worthless to Barrick because there are already Tanzanians with permits mining that gold. So the company they were trying to buy it from said, okay, we'll clear them. And they did. They took bulldozers and ran them across the property and smashed down all the workers' homes. They smashed down their equipment. Military police firing guns behind the bulldozers to make sure that the point was made. They filled in their small mining pits and mine shafts, chased away 30,000 workers, except for 50. 50 workers were still in the mine pits when they sealed them up. Yeah. And I reported that in Orwell's old column, Observer. And they sued me again. They sued me for that. And they sued my paper, I should say. And again, it's frightening stuff because there is no First Amendment. That's why Richard Pearl is suing Cy Hirsch for exposing his little deal with Adnan Khashoggi. Because we have no freedom. This country has an extraordinary First Amendment. Britain has none. I've suggested that they need one. And they can borrow ours because we're not using it, you know. Yeah, but no, seriously, this is difficult. So I encouraged, and my paper encouraged, one of the leading international experts on environmental and human rights law, a guy named Tundu Lissu, L-I-S-S-U, Lissu, at the World Resources Institute, Washington, D.C., and to go check it out. He's very well qualified because he also had a law degree. He was a member of the bar in Tanzania, and he spoke Swahili. Perfect to send there. So I said, whatever you find, if it's a bogus story, tell me. What he sent back were pictures of crushed corpses. What he sent back was he snuck out of the country police videotapes of body parts being exhumed, okay? And witness statements, including one from a guy who took 4 days to dig his way out of a pit, okay? And I took it to Barrick, to Bush's Goldfinger buddies, and I said, so, what do you say? And they said, fine, we want you to sign a statement that you can confirm that no one died in the peaceful clearance of the mines. I could happily confirm that no one died in peaceful clearance of mines. I said, I'd be very happy, but look. I said, what's your counter evidence? They said, the evidence is we're billionaires and you're not. And I said, well, I can't sign. And not because I'm some type of man for all seasons, but the problem was that just before he left Tanzania, Tundu Lissu and his law partners held a press conference saying, in Swahili, we now have evidence which suggests there ought to be an investigation of the clearance of the gold fields at Bulyanhulu. And for that, he was charged with sedition. So I couldn't sign and hang him, literally. Now, what I didn't know was that, in fact, he didn't know about the charges. He'd gotten on a plane. He was already in Europe. So it looked, I really breathed a sigh of relief. And I met up with him in Washington. Last October, his wife was pregnant with twins. And I've got twins, so I said, so what are you going to do? We talked twin talk. I said, what are you going to do after the twins are born? He said, I'm going back to Tanzania. Now, part of that was because the Bush administration, when he came back, suggested to the World Resources Institute that they let Tundu Lissu's project go, which means that he would have no visa, no right to stay here. World Resources Institute refused, so the government removed $3 million, closing to, they're trying to bankrupt the operation. I said, well, you can still seek political asylum. He said, no, I'm going back. I said, but Tundu, you go back and you'll go to jail. He said, if I'm lucky. So he went back in December. He was arrested, jailed. He's been in and out. His partner's homes ransacked, law offices burnt down. Member of the opposition party who brought this up about Daddy Bush's gold mining operation was beaten till he was hospitalized. We don't know what the end of the story is yet. Some of this is in the book, but you got to keep up with this one. So we got work to do, lots of work. Go to my website, write it down, www.gregpalast.com. We're going to stay informed on this. As long as we keep his name alive, maybe we can keep him alive. See, there's lots of fronts in this war. Because because all these wars are about money. And one front, sometimes it's black, oily money, and sometimes it's shiny gold money. But the Bush wars have many fronts. One's in Iraq, and one's in Tanzania, and one's in Venezuela, right? So you just got to keep track of them all. We'll just have to use the internet to track them down. Let me grab some water. So we'll stay in touch. We got to keep meeting like this. In fact, it's more important than ever. Do you think okay, we've had our marches, right? We didn't stop the war. Actually, if it weren't for those marches, don't forget, by this time, 12 years ago, 100,000 Shiites were burnt to death by high aerial bombing from B-52s outside of Basra. Fiats and Volkswagens as far as the eye could see, with grandma and the family cat, charred, burnt out, incinerated. These were the people who opposed Saddam Hussein. I actually thought that Saddam was going to give Daddy Bush a medal for destroying his opposition city. That didn't happen this time. That didn't happen there because of what we did here, okay? But, remember, democracy's coming to Iraq, and not just Bob Zoellick of Enron is rewriting their laws. But we've got, I'm going back to that whole, statement of Bush's about, we're going after those who harbor, train, and aid terrorists. We did have a guy who died in the World Trade Center, who was in charge of the Al-Qaeda investigation for the FBI, a guy named Paul O'Neill. And I was thinking about that with the announcement last night. That Barbara Boudin, current ambassador to Yemen, would be part of the new junta that's been designated to run Iraq. Boudin and two used generals that we've pulled out of the freezer will be the new ruling junta. So, but Boudin was an interesting choice. She's going to have control, it said, of central Iraq. This is, the democratization process. I was interested in her because she's the one who blocked the investigation by the FBI into Al-Qaeda in Yemen. So I thought it was appropriate that someone running interference for Mr. Osama bin Laden should run Iraq, because our president has accused the Iraqi government of aiding bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, so with Boudin in, he'll have the proof. You're laughing. Harboring and training Al-Qaeda. Golly, I want to show you something. Even though it says secret across the top. I like documents. If you see in the book, you see all these documents, pictures of documents. Go to my website, you see documents. I like documents. They say secret. I always wonder why they put secret on it. It's the first thing I go to. If it said same old, secret, I go. I usually don't tell you how I get these things. This one I got to tell you. It says in the corner 199I, which means National Security Document, WF for Washington Office of the FBI. Actually, if there's anyone here from the FBI, I got, you want this back? Just come on up. Come on. Is this Poindexter's? Yeah. So National Security, Washington Office of the FBI. How I got it is that I'm kind of the nose on camera for a whole gigantic BBC, not gigantic, a whole team, BBC, Guardian reporters, researchers, and they came to our team in Washington, the FBI agents, and asked some questions. We don't know what about what, and then when they left a file on our desks. And then they called back quickly and said, we left a file on your desk. You haven't looked at it, have you? Not moi. They said, well, we'll be back in a half hour to pick it up. Unless you need 40 minutes. Okay. So what did these agents accidentally leave for us? Well, I told you it's a national security document, it's secret, but it's the reopening of an investigation into a, quote, suspected terrorist organization. Now that means, KBCS, Indie Media Center of Seattle, the usual. But I checked this one out called Whammy is the name of the organization, and they're kind of worth looking into. I found a tape of theirs called Jihad, the misunderstood term about taking civilian hostages and killing them, and that's the kind of thing that the FBI is supposed to be looking at, right? But they weren't allowed to look at them until September 13th, 2001, according to this document. I mean, who weren't they supposed to look at? And I look at the second page, and it has the name Bin Laden, not Osama. See, Osama, according to our president, is the black sheep of the family, and the rest are all white sheep. We know that because they back Bush family enterprises like Carlyle Corporation, other guys like Adnan Khashoggi, other guys like Sheikh Abdullah Bakhsh, his whole crew. The FBI, apparently, believed that there were some, despite what our president said, there were some gray sheep that they wanted to talk to, but by the time they were allowed to investigate, the sheep had flown, okay, out of the country. Now that's interesting. So that's the FBI agents, but then we talked to DIA agents, the CIA agents, and other agents, and they were telling us, and those in other intelligence agencies, they were telling us there's a problem. That the Bush administration did not want investigations of Saudi Arabian financing of terrorist front. Okay? Now, it included such things as the follow-up on a meeting in 1996 when Al-Qaeda's financial arm allegedly met with Saudi arms dealers and billionaires and who opened up their checkbooks and said, you're creating little problems in Saudi Arabia, like they had just killed 19 Americans in their sleep by blowing up the Khobar Towers. So how much does it cost to let you go play in Afghanistan, right? The problem with not following the money from those meetings is that some of that money gets to be used for things like flying lessons in America for guys who have no intention of landing, right? So you want to follow the money. Rule 1 of investigations. I said, well, why couldn't they follow the money? So the first question I had was, well, who was in the meeting that we cannot look at? 2 sources tell me, Adnan Khashoggi. Okay? Another, Abdullah Bakhsh. Who's Abdullah Bakhsh? See, our president has made a lot of money. He's become a multi-millionaire in the oil business. Never found any oil, but he found a lot of sheikhs. He'd always drill into a sheikh's pocket and bang, Harkin Oil, his third company, is about to go under when it was saved by a refinancing by a guy named by a sheikh named Abdullah Bakhsh. Well, now let me tell you what I'm not finding. I'm not finding that George Bush knew in advance about the September 11th attack. I really have not found any such evidence. I would report it to you. I wouldn't be afraid to, but I haven't found it. In fact, our rule at BBC is that if anyone accuses George Bush of knowing anything at all, you better have documentation. Yeah. In fact, there was a little deal where one of the harboring, training, abetting, we got a Project Censored award for the BBC and Guardian for California State University Journalism School gives us these awards for most censored stories, right? Which you ran at the top of the news, but it kind of bounced off the electronic Berlin Wall here about what we're talking about here is the money poisoning and the oil contamination of a foreign policy which then controls the intelligence agencies. It's about a money blindness in the system. But interesting, we talked about harboring and training Al-Qaeda. Now, one guy we put on the air in all over the world, because ours is the main nightly news program worldwide. We put on State Department officials, one who said that he issued visas unwillingly to some engineers from Saudi Arabia in the 1980s going to America. He said, because he asked these engineers where they went to engineering school, and they said, looked at each other and said, we don't remember. Suspecting that these were not nice guys to allow into America, he tried to kill the visas, and lo and behold, he was pulled aside and said, no. Those guys go. Stamped, approved. Turns out, he's a lawyer, looks into it. He says these guys are working for a guy working for the United States government named Osama bin Laden. But this is the 1980s. See, they were his merry band who were being brought over for so-called counterterrorism training to be used against the evil Soviet Empire in Afghanistan. Remember, Osama was our boy at first. Then he kind of, Frankenstein got up off the table. The Frankenstein we created came back to haunt us, right? And we're creating more Frankensteins. How do we know? How do we know that Saddam has a radioactive erector set in his rumpus room of one of those palaces? The answer is that the Saudis gave him $7 billion. That's the other information we reported in The Guardian and in my book and on BBC. The Saudis gave him $7 billion, which could only be done with a wink and a nod from the U.S. government. But what the heck are we doing that for? Well, this was during, Condoleezza Rice said, it's terrible to have left that madman butcher in Baghdad for 12 years. Well, he's been in Condi for 24 years. What she meant is that the first 12 years, he was our butcher. We got our chops there, and he was using this money to create an atomic bomb to threaten the Iranians. See, it's before the axis of evil when Iran was the unicycle of evil, right? And so he created these. So we're always surprised when Frankenstein gets off the table and comes back at us. Have we learned any lessons, guys? How about, where did the money go after Saudi Arabia cut off Saddam when he went renegade in 91? They sent it, according to the agents who were not allowed to track this, to Pakistan. Okay? We don't need to send an inspector into Pakistan to see if the mad dictator Berserker Musharraf has an atomic bomb. He exploded his on television. Last week he tested a nuclear-capable missile to fly over India. Okay? So, and you think you would get rid of this, and Colin Powell says we're going in after this madman with weapons of mass destruction. I thought we were invading Pakistan, but no. We're going to Iraq, and instead our president is seen with Musharraf, the guy who installed the Taliban in Afghanistan. He's seen with Musharraf. They've got their arms around each other like they're going to prom together. So just remember this now. Okay? Write it down. 12 years from now, President Jeb Bush is going to order us tell us we got to go into Pakistan to get the killer of Karachi. You think I'm kidding? Okay. Write it down. Who is winning the war on terror? We talked about who's winning the war in Iraq. We didn't. Bob Zoellick's rewriting the laws, the record industry, so that they'll make sure that every Iraqi pays for their Madonna records, right? Their Madonna scene. But we still know who's winning the war on terror. There's lots of candidates. According to Forbes magazine, Forbes magazine said, the winner of the war on terror are companies like ChoicePoint Inc. So who's these guys who are winning the war? You know, I know that, well, it's supposed to be us. You're all safer tonight, right? You've read the polls in the Muslim nations. You know, 40% of the people believe we should be all have our heads sliced off, and the other 60% believe that we should have our arms sliced off, right? So we're all safer tonight. Yeah, so ChoicePoint. So who are these guys? As Butch said to Sundance. Who are those guys? So in order to know, you have to go back to the 2000 election. And I know you're saying, move on, Greg. You heard from Catherine. Move on, get over it. But I have to tell you, but you have to know who's winning the war on terror. You have to know who won that election. And in November 2000, I'm back in London, you know, winding down, and with my glass of wine, vegging out in front of my own TV show, watching the tube, and black person after black person after black person is coming on the set saying, I couldn't vote in Florida because my name was on the voter rolls, or, you know, they said I wasn't registered. Oh, by the way, I don't know if you know this, but BBC has a rule allowing black people on camera who aren't criminals, so. Yeah, it's true. I'm not making it up. So I'm thinking, geez, I wonder, and you have to understand, like, I'm a kind of conspiracy nut. If you watched, in fact, Steve Sher this morning said, before I got in the air, he said, are you a conspiracy nut? I said, no, I'm a conspiracy expert. I am, actually. I worked for the Attorney General. I used to do investigations with one of my clients. I was looking at, into criminal conspiracies here in Washington for your Attorney General, like Washington Water Power is one. And because I was on Politically Incorrect, and they call me a conspiracy nut, and got a big laugh, from the conspirators, right? And so I'm looking at all these black people. In my conspiracy mind, I'm thinking, maybe there's like some computer program which is reaching into the voter rolls and like hunting down black people and removing their names, right? I thought I'd show you the program. Straight out of the computers of Catherine Harris's office of, oops, oh, come on. Mr. Gates, come on, Bill. I didn't mean it. Right in the offices of Catherine Harris. There were 100,000 newsmen in Florida, hanging from their chads, but none of them were asking about this list of people that were removed from the voter roll. So BBC sent me from London to Tallahassee to get it and crack it and look at it. We had to crack it. Let's see if we can get this up here. But what you're going to see is a list of 57,700 names that were removed by Catherine Harris and Jeb Bush, or Catherine Harris's office, her Department of Elections. These are people who are felons, ne'er-do-wells, criminals, who shouldn't be allowed to vote. That, according to Florida law, they have records. You can't vote. Okay. And let's see if I can show you some of these ne'er-do-wells. Oops, here it comes. Let's see. Bzzz. Hourglass. Yeah, you really want computer voting, right? Okay, here's a good one. Here's the list of names. I don't know if you can see it, but I want to show it to you. Can you see it? It's pretty big. I can, make it bigger screen. But there's one guy here, if you can see it. Where? Yeah. Let's see if I can find. Oops. Come on, Bill. If you look down, there's one here that says. There it is. Okay. It was one of the favorites because I was going down the screens myself. I'm seeing Thomas Cooper. And it says that he's convicted of a felony crime. His conviction was on January 30th, 2007. Okay. Catherine? You see, you thought Minority Report was like a fiction, right? Catherine Harris, detective of the future, goes in and gets the bad guys, brings them back, says, you can't vote in Florida. There are 500 criminals of the future on this list. Was it deliberate? Well, there was a no, you got to hear the evidence first. It's only fair. I went and got the email traffic from the Florida Department of Elections, and lo and behold, there were clerks who said, hey, we're eliminating the civil rights of people convicted in the future. What should we do? I thought, I don't know, went to LA public schools. I thought you give them back their civil rights. No, the Republican functionary said, if you blank out the conviction dates, no one will know. See the blanks? Convicted no time, but just in time for the election, right? 4,000 blank conviction dates, blanked out. 57,700 people, a few of them innocent, 90.2% of them completely innocent of any crime, except being, I should have kept it open. See on the right-hand column, it says BLA, BLA, WHI, BLA. The race is right next to the voter's name. They were innocent of every crime except voting while black. 54%. You can count them. We're not guessing. Innocent and black. 20,000 votes lost to Al Gore, according to our demographers from that little list. There's more. The NAACP sued. You read that in the papers, right? They won. Catherine Harris, put up your hands. You got me. They said, it wasn't, pals wrong, not 57,000, 94,000 people targeted for removal and more, prevented from voting. Who came up with this nice little list that elected your president? The winner of the war on terror, Choice Point. But it didn't start out with Choice Point. There was another firm that was paid $5,000 a year to purge the files. Like I said, didn't come up with enough BLA people because they were fired. The work was put out to bid. The bids were thrown out because Choice Point had the highest bid, so they were hired without a bid for $2 million. 5,000 to $2 million. I thought it was interesting. Couldn't get any American reporter interested in that. But I thought it was interesting. What's the $2 million for? Well, the $2 million, as it turns out, if you go in the book, you'll see it. The document, again, here they did it. Marked secret and confidential. Went right for it. I had to get it. Which said the $2 million was for manual verification using telephone calls. See, if you're going to take away people's civil rights, if you're in database firms, even Victoria's Secret, they don't want to get the wrong, panties out. They actually call up and they try to, get address histories and everything else. Make sure that they're not taking away civil rights of innocent people, because if you did that, the list of 57,000 would crush down to about maybe 57, according to the Attorney General of the state. 57,000 to 57. Okay. But the calls, so I called Choice Point. I said, could you give me the call sheets? See, generally, the procedure is that if you make thousands of calls, you get paid $2 million, you have call sheets. Choice Point in Atlanta said, there are no call sheets. I said, you mean you made these calls and you didn't even have like a note on a sticky pad or something? He said, well, we didn't actually make telephone calls. See, we didn't actually have to dial a telephone to fulfill this requirement to make telephone calls. This is like a whole new age frontier for me. And I was really trying to get my head into that space. Dialing, the phone calls that didn't require a telephone. And my Welsh director said, would you call Catherine Harris? So we did that, and she set us up to have a discussion with her chief of her elections department, a guy named Clayton Roberts, like this slitty-eyed guy, big round redhead, who does her thinking for her. And sly reference to Samuel Beckett. And so I sat down with Clayton, polite BBC interview, asked him, showed him the photocopy of the check for $2 million, asked him some polite questions, and then I started pulling out that little document that said secret and confidential. Thought I'd ask him about the phone calls, and as soon as he saw that, he ripped off his microphone, did a 20-yard dash across the camera wires, locked himself in his office, and called in the state troopers to remove me and my BBC television crew. No. I'm sure he had another appointment. Now, what's fascinating is that while I was filming Roberts, PBS was filming me. See, PBS crew was following me around, covering the story of the elections. This created a bit of a problem for PBS because despite their traditions and their hallowed traditions, they now had real investigative reporting footage. They had this, and they had assigned to do the post-election story on what happened in Florida to this terrific multi-Emmy Award-winning director, Danny Schechter, said, "Hey, we have great footage, man." And he put into the film the Roberts bunny hop, and he put in the elections purge, and the scrub list, and the secret documents, and Greg Palast. And then PBS said, looking at who was their new boss, they said, we're not going to put this on the satellite for the network, no. So because there was some difficulty I know that PBS has had some technical difficulty getting this film out. I'm helping them out. I've made several thousand copies. I only brought like 25 or so here, like for $20 or something. You can get them, but spread them around, and you can play them in your basements or with your groups. But make sure you do it before Patriot Act 4. Okay. Well, you almost saw this stuff on CBS television. CBS, where I actually had a CBS reporter on my show in Britain. Another reporter's talking to him, and he said, we want to ask those tough questions. We should ask tough questions. Our kids are in the Mideast, facing bullets. I'm not going to ask tough questions, but, because I could be lynched as unpatriotic. That was Dan Rather was his name. And, yeah, look up the transcript on my BBC website. Anyway, Dan's operation called me and said, "Gee, we really like this Florida, black scrubless story. We'd like to do it, but we'd like you to give us something new." Okay. I said, "Well, you could do your own research, but I'll give you this. Jeb Bush was involved, or his office, to be more exact, not just Catherine Harris. He wrote a letter, his office wrote a letter 6 weeks before the election, dated September 18th, 2000, I told them, in which his office ordered the removal of legal voters in violation of 2 court orders and prevented the registration of other legal voters." Okay? It's a little complex. As soon as I said complex, I said, "Dan can read it off the card." But that's what it came down to. Violation of court orders, ordering what it did, it prevented over 50,000 voters, almost every one of them Democrats, from voting. Okay? He said, "Ooh, that's a good story." I said, "Yeah, but you got to get the document, the letter, or more proof that it's there. I had it from 2 sources. You better go check this out." I said, "We will." A week goes by, they don't run the story. I call up CBS. I'm in London. I call up CBS network producer, and I said, "So, what happened to the story?" "Sorry, Greg, your story didn't stand up." This is what they said. This is a comment I hear often from U.S. News producers. Your story didn't stand up. I said, okay, why is it limping this time? They said, well, we investigated, and there is no such letter. You've got it wrong. I said, oh. I said, how'd you find out? You know, big CBS operation. I'll learn something about investigative reporting. They said, well, we called Jeb Bush's office. And they denied it. They said I was wrong. No letter. Okay. I think I can save myself a lot of effort if I use their methods. But I'm not allowed to. You know, George is looking over my shoulder saying, better check this out. Had trouble getting the letter, but then I got a letter, or I should say the editors of Harper's Magazine got a letter, or I did after a couple of years report some of this story, the voter purge, from a woman calling me twisted and maniacal, Catherine Harris. In fact, I put her entire letter on my website. She's going on and on and on, saying, Palast is twisted and maniacal, but he's not wrong, because she did sign off at the NAACP that she removed thousands of legal voters, but she says, it wasn't my fault. Everyone else told me to do it, the Attorney General, the state legislature, and I got a letter from the governor. So I called her office and spoke to the clerk. I love talking to the clerks. And I said, I didn't say this is Mr. Twisted Maniacal. I said, I just got a letter from your Secretary of State. And she's mentioning a letter that she got from the governor about removal of felon voters and voter registrations and blocking certain voters from voting and registering. And I'm sure she wants me to see that letter so we can discuss it. Could you send it to me? I'm quite sure it's dated September 18th, 2000. 10 minutes later, my fax machine